Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am with you recording this in lovely Escazú, Costa Rica, on Sunday, August 16th in the year 2026. And we have just been through an eclipse, and we're on our way to another one, but not for another bunch of days. Well, what do I have to say about this past eclipse? I'm going to tell you that I really started feeling it when Chiron stationed retrograde 2 weeks ago. So I really felt the energies changing then in this Chiron station. And then when the eclipse came, I can tell you for the days before that, I felt uncomfortable and rattled and anxious. And I did breath work to support myself. I did journaling. I did good things to help myself along. I went to a Joe Dispenza's group, Coherence Healing, that I signed up for. I did it the exact moment of the eclipse. So it was starting at 11:37 or so here, and I started my session with them at 11:30. And that was really lovely and beautiful. And throughout that day, I felt the energy of the eclipse finally dissipating after the actual aspect happened. But right after the eclipse, I would say that the most difficult exchange that happened during this Leo eclipse is that I had an argument with my cat. And probably people are hearing me say this and say, well, aren't you lucky? Is that all it was? You didn't have like an all knockdown drag out with your spouse like I did. And other people who are listening who are thinking that I'm crazy. But it was enough. It was enough to get my energy up and out. Maybe I just needed to have that happen so I can like get the energy out of my system. Because after that, it felt so much better. But I did have an argument with my cat, and because after my lovely Joe Dispenza group, not with him, but the Coherence Healing group happened, I did this lovely healing that I mentioned. I went to make my lunch, and I was sitting down, and I was getting ready to eat, and I could hear my cat screaming at one of the other cats. So what else is new? So I was going to try to break up the argument, and she was really angry. I couldn't find her at first, and then I had to go to the bridge to find her, and her ears were flat, and she's yelling at this poor Bugatti, who's always the target, and I couldn't do anything because it was Waterless Wednesday. We don't have water on Wednesdays for the last several months because I think of the lack of rain and the dryness that's been happening, and they're either conserving or they're repairing or they're doing something. There's water rations. So I couldn't turn on the hose and give them a little spritz. The gate was locked. I couldn't get out to it. So I was so aggravated. I started yelling at her, and then the guard came and broke up the fight. And I went over to her and I just let her have it. Because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It's time and time and time again of her not getting the fact that these cats are not going anywhere, and nothing she can do can stop that. And they're in places that it's not like they're sitting in my house or on my patio. They're out on the garden, and she just is like, you can't be here. So I know it's a trivial matter in the grand scheme of life and bigger pictures, but in that moment I was furious. And imagine how I feel. And I guess the psychology of this has to be explained for a minute. I don't know where she is, and she's screaming. So I don't know if she's being injured, her fur is being ripped off, or whatever. And then all I'm thinking of is the worst, and I've got to go to the emergency vet and get myself there. And it's not that serious when I find her and she's just yelling at a cat because he exists. So you as a pet owner, you don't know, and you fear that something horrible is happening when you hear your animal in distress. And so, yes, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. And then I don't want the screaming, and I don't want this activity. And so I let her have it. And she sat under the chair and looked at me, and I felt so bad, and I apologized to her, and all was well. And she didn't react, and she just came around later. We were fine. All was good. But she knows that this is not acceptable behavior. She just continues it. Anyway, moving right along. That was my big explosion of the day. And if that was it, well, then I didn't have such a bad eclipse. But I can say that emotionally, I didn't feel clear again until Saturday morning, yesterday morning. And there were so many voids. Moon, the moon went void right after the eclipse for the rest of the day. And then by the time you got moving on Thursday for anything, the moon was void again. It was only not void overnight and then part of the morning. And then went void again, and it was void the rest of Thursday, all day Friday. And I woke up yesterday morning and it was still still in void. And then I just felt this clarity that I hadn't felt in days. And I think maybe it was the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. So I felt more clear yesterday, but then this morning I woke up and definitely felt sludge again. So we're coming in and out of this, and this is the energetics of the eclipse. It's not entirely clear. It's not entirely sludgy. I moved past sludge today, but I think this is what we're dealing with. Now, it was a South Node eclipse, and I did have some very deep understandings with myself about where those things needed to be released. Those South Node things that I know so well need to be released, and where I need to move forward into more North Node things. And so that's what we have to look forward to on the 28th of August. It's a North Node eclipse. It's not in Aquarius. It's in Pisces, because the North Node is in Aquarius, but is closer to the North Node. This one was closer to the South Node, although neither one of these eclipses is right exactly with the node. So this one that's coming up on the 28th of August is really something where we can sort of open up to something healing, I would imagine, because it is in Pisces, although Uranus is in the middle of the eclipse. And so while Uranus will rattle the cage, I think in the meantime, between now and then, our goal should be really looking towards something healing in our lives, some faith-oriented practice, something meditative, something that is going to help us soothe all of this sludge and aggravation that we've just been through in this last eclipse. And, eclipse energies are high, they're intense. I only ever feel them dissipate by the time the following lunation happens and we're really out of it. But we're moving towards something healing. We're moving towards the North Node, which is where the fulfillment is. And I really recommend that the goal be about taking care of your emotional needs as we move from, this first eclipse to the second one. Remember, it's at the North Node, and the North Node is the area of fulfillment. And while it's going to the moon is going to pass over the North Node in Aquarius on its way to Pisces, where the eclipse is. And, we can get some enlightenment from that. And that's, Pisces, hey, more enlightenment. I think this is an important thing to focus on as we're moving towards that eclipse. And emotionally satisfied, right? So something that's hanging around right now needs to be resolved. So, and believe me, the eclipse didn't cause it. My cat didn't cause it. There was already something emotionally going on for me and for each and every one of us that seeks to be healed at this second eclipse. So that is my recommendation. That is the goal. In this week ahead, we are not having an eclipse, and this is the week in between the eclipses. So what we want to pay attention to is the energies that we are working with as we move from one eclipse to the other, and the feelings we have and the emotions we're dealing with, and the patterns that are emerging in our life. And those are really important things to pay attention to right now. So whatever patterns you are seeing that are coming up and are asking to be healed, well, then those are the ones you want to work towards in these next couple weeks. You can change emotions in a matter of minutes. You can. Just because I'm saying this now and I'm saying we've got an eclipse on the 28th, it's only the 16th. We've got 12 more days. This is an opportunity to take advantage of, to work on those feelings and circle through them and cycle through them and work through what stuff is remaining in your life, okay? In the meantime, the sun is moving out of Leo and into Virgo, and that's going to happen on this next Saturday, the 22nd. So we are now entering this last week of Leo season for the year. And I love Leo season because it's the season for the sun rulership and the vitality and the creativity of Leo, and it's a beautiful thing. Especially when we take advantage of that energy and we get creative and we allow ourselves to open up creatively and we allow ourselves to open our hearts. So this experience of this last week are the final degrees of Leo. And the sun is not at the south node yet. The south node is at 29 Leo. It's only moved there recently. Remember, the nodes changed signs a few weeks ago. And so my feeling is we're going to get another dose of sludge when the sun gets to the south node, which is going to be between like Friday and Saturday. And this is something to really pay attention to. Now we have 3 planets, because the moon has moved on. 3 planets in Leo and the south node in Leo, and one by one they will go to that south node, and Jupiter and the south node won't get together for a while because the south node will move back, Jupiter will move forward. That won't be for a while, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But in the meantime, we've got the sun, which is only about 5 degrees away from the south node now, and so when we get to Friday and all, the sun reaches the south node, and there are things that happen when the sun is at the south node, typically at any time, but it's usually during eclipse season, right? So we have to be aware of this. Now, the sun is this vital, energetic force, the very force of life, the fire that we seek to embody. And the thing is, with the south node, it's like going into a vortex, right? And this is something to really pay attention to. Our narcissistic needs, because we all have some, are going to be screaming at us. Our feelings of old habits again, trying to squeeze something out of something that is no longer relevant in our lives, that's important to pay attention to and to not indulge it. And then also, I want you to pay attention to when you have the sun going over your personal south node that sits in your astrological chart. So, and that may not be happening now. It could be happening anytime through the year. But that, I just want you to feel into this as we come to this at the end of this week. And notice where you feel maybe that you need gratification. Not satisfaction, not fulfillment. That happens at the north node. But with the sun going over the south node, there is this component of desire to fulfill something that is probably a childish need, a narcissistic need, an addictive need, and it doesn't mean you're going to fall off the wagon if you're sober or anything like that. It just means that you are wanting to indulge something that is probably not in your highest and best good. And so between Friday and Saturday, you're going to feel those things the strongest. And then Mercury is going to come rambling over the south node a few days later, and that's going to be Monday, a week from tomorrow. So that's going to be really, not till next week. But it's important to pay attention to these things because they're going to happen a couple days in a row next to each other. Okay, now why I want you to pay attention to this is because when this happens for you personally, as I mentioned, your personal south node, wherever it is in your horoscope, when the sun comes to that, there are usually not good feelings that come up during that time. So I'll use myself as an example. So I have the south node at 11 degrees of Capricorn. And so when is 11 degrees of Capricorn? That's about New Year's. Okay, so when the sun comes to 11 degrees Capricorn, it's about New Year's and maybe a day or so later. Well, I used to have a real problem, especially when I was a kid, going back to school after New Year's, after we had Christmas break. And it was not a stubborn, bratty thing. It was a depressive, I don't know if I can cope with this thing. It was really hard for me. And when we'd go back to school, it would be like this depressive, sad. I wasn't a depressed kid, and I've never suffered from depression, but there was a moment. It was always a moment, and I never understood it except to name it as the end of Christmas vacation. Now, when you don't like your school, as I did in elementary school, you had a problem going back to school after Christmas, and high school was different, but even into adulthood, I would have this problem and it would just feel terrible, and I couldn't name it and I didn't know why, but it was a pattern. I saw it every year. And then I studied with Michael Luton, and he brought this up in conversation in teaching us, and I was like, that's what it is. Because then I could follow the astrology and understand it. And once I understood that, I sought to fulfill myself in other ways, and then it went away. And I don't have that anymore. I don't ever get that anymore. But it really made a difference knowing that. And so wherever your South Node is, if you have the South Node at 29 Leo, which is where it is now, and you've got a birthday coming up this week and the sun is going to go over 29 Leo, well, then you may feel this, and especially when there's an eclipse. But it was so much better once I had that information in my pocket and I didn't need to indulge it anymore. And so I think that that's something important to pay attention to. So watch how you feel. And I'm saying this, the sun goes to the South Node every year at eclipse season because the sun and the moon are close to the nodes during eclipses. Now, it doesn't always work that way every eclipse time because the nodes are in one sign and the sun goes through multiple signs in the year. So it's really once a year, and this is it. This is the week when that happens. Now, we've got some other things happening, and I'm skipping around a little bit because things are important relative to the eclipses, so I want to bring attention to that. That's going to happen between Friday and Saturday. And then the same day, Friday the 21st here, we're getting Venus opposite Saturn. So Venus is in Libra, and she's going to be opposite Saturn in Aries, and this is going to be the one time in the year when she opposes Saturn, and that's going to compound that feeling of the South Node and the sun. So if you feel blue, if you feel a little sad, if you feel that depressive, heavy thing that I was talking about, then you are feeling the sun at the South Node and Venus opposite Saturn. Maybe you are feeling unloved. Maybe you are feeling you are unlovable. Maybe you are feeling unworthy on some level. But these are things to pay attention to and to work through. You don't just want to sit with them and go, ho hum, I feel unworthy. What is the root of that? Where is that surfacing from your life? Where are Venus and Saturn opposing one another in your life, in your chart? Okay, how does that manifest for you? Are you a Venus-Saturn opposition by natal chart? And if you are, then this is a recurrence and you're going to feel this very strongly. If you're a sun to the South Node person, then you're going to feel that very strongly too, because that too is a recurrence. So be aware, pay attention, and honor how you're feeling. Honor your energies, honor your feelings, and honor what is moving through you during this time, and allow it to release. South Node is a release point. So we want to release that energy of the South Node sun. I always recommend meditation. Breath work is another great thing. You just can really breathe through this, and the emotions come up. You feel them in your body. You let them go, and this is perfect. Perfect aspects to be doing that kind of releasing. So highly recommend doing some really good release work, whether it's emotional, psychological, breath work, etc. All of those things are good to do under these aspects. And don't be so hard on yourself, especially with Venus Saturn. Don't be so hard on yourself. Love yourself. And if there's ever a time to really nurture yourself, it's during those aspects between Friday and Saturday. So I want to bring that to people's attention because here we are, we're in between the two eclipses, and the sun is moving over that South Node, and it's really, it's a little hard to go through that. And if you've ever had that progression in your chart, you'll know that that is complicated as well. So I think it's a very strong astrological relationship, and I think it warrants our attention and our acknowledgement and our release. So do some work around these things. It will serve you so much. It really will. In the meantime, other things are happening this week, and tomorrow is kind of a big day because we have Mars in Cancer, we were talking about that last week. Mars is now going to be squaring Neptune. So Mars is in Cancer, not his favorite sign, less active than he likes to be, and then squaring Neptune in Aries. Now, I mentioned when Venus was doing this, or rather Venus is in Libra, opposing Neptune the other day. And, so I was mentioning Mars when I was talking about that aspect, and here we are, Mars is squaring Neptune. They are tricky together. They are not comfortable together. Mars and Neptune are, and you've heard me say this before if you've listened to me for a long time, Mars and Neptune are not friends in that respect. Mars is much more active. It's much more straightforward. It's the warrior planet, and it wants to release and put forward, and it's confident, and Neptune just messes all that up. So if you feel like you've lost your confidence, you're probably just experiencing Mars and Neptune. If you feel like you don't know your direction, you're a little confused, you're directionless, that's happening also with Mars and Neptune. They are a strange pair. And I also recommend being very careful, first of all, with your words. You might wound someone and you don't even realize it. That's one thing. You get into battle and it's going nowhere. Mars and Neptune, you could get into a battle and it's just self-defeating, and that is a defeating aspect. That's why did I even bother? No one's listening. Why did I bother? Nothing happened. I didn't receive or succeed in any way with this. So you have to be careful how you use your energy and your vitality with Mars, and when it's squaring Neptune, don't waste your time. Think about something, and Mars just wants to act, right? Think about what you're doing and what the ramifications are and how they would turn out when you act out of alignment, which could very well be when Mars squares Neptune. The ramifications of that could be very detrimental. I would just proceed with caution. I would be mindful in proceeding, and I would also be very clear in my intentions. And this is a good thing to do. If you are doing any intentional work with yourself, this is a very strong time to be very careful, to be very aware, and to be very clear on what your intentions are. If you have muddied intentions, and this is part of the sludge I'm talking about, because it's eclipse season, because we've got Mars, Neptune, well then I would say sit with yourself long enough until the fog lifts. The morning fog burns off by noon. So sit with yourself until the fog lifts, the fog from Neptune lifts, and really sit in the discomfort of what your actions may be and how they may turn out, okay? So that's one thing happening tomorrow. The other is that Mercury in Leo is making a trine to Saturn. Now that offers a lot of clarity, and I think that is a very good aspect to have at the same time that Mars is squaring Neptune, because this is going to bring clarity. And they're both in fire, so again, we're going to want to act, we're going to want to speak, we're going to want to step forward. And that happens at 11:27 a.m., many hours after Mars squares Neptune, which is at 5:52 a.m. These are Eastern time zones. And, Mercury in Leo is clear-headed and wants to create, and with Saturn can actually bring something to fruition. So I think that's very positive. The other aspect we're having is that Venus in Libra is sextiling Jupiter in Leo. That's fantastic. That's really great. That's wonderful that the two benefics are speaking sweetly to one another and asking us to open our hearts again, Venus and Jupiter, and open up to something that's clear, and just be aware and have compassion and empathy too, because Mars and Neptune can bring in the compassion and empathy. If your actions are towards compassion and empathy, well then that's great. That's that could really bring in some satisfying experiences. But Venus and Jupiter, we love when they get together, and we love Jupiter's expansion to Venus's love and beauty and creativity. And Venus is in one of her best places. Jupiter's in a fire sign. This is a lovely aspect happening at 12:16 p.m. tomorrow Eastern Time. Use this energy don't bypass it. Just don't go, oh, I had a lovely, afternoon, shopping. That's fine. But use the energy for like going deeper and getting creative and again, sitting with yourself. Jupiter also brings in a certain amount of self-awareness. And who can you forgive under an aspect like this? Where have you been wrong and where can you make it better? And it doesn't even have to be a person who's alive anymore. Maybe you just need to forgive that person for whatever it was. And remember, forgiveness is for us, not them. And it's for releasing the past and releasing the charge on something that made us, angry or etc. So that's something to work with tomorrow. Those are 3 great aspects to work with tomorrow. And by the way, I posted on Instagram, Venus in the sky is very bright and beautiful right now. And she's closer to the Earth because she's getting close to that retrograde time in like a month and a half. And I would really, if your sky is clear, I would really recommend going out to see her because it's just stunning. And first I thought it was Jupiter, and then I'm like, no, that's Venus. Wow. So beautiful, so big and bright and juicy. And I told people on Instagram to please go make a wish if you see it. So I hope that you get a chance to see her in the sky in the evening right now, because once she's retrograde, she'll then become a morning star. So look for Venus. Go outside at night. Look for Venus. See where she is. Take a little walk around the neighborhood if you can see it. And make a wish. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. The moon is going void tomorrow at 7:31 a.m. Eastern time after it makes a lovely sextile to the moon in Leo. So now they're in this nice peaceful place with one another. They're not conjunct anymore. There's 60 degrees between them. And then the moon will go void. And so that's going to leave us in the gap until 5:46 p.m. when the moon enters Scorpio. Now, that's basically an all-day void moon. So it's the weekend that wasn't void, and then the days of the week are becoming more and more void. And this is because we don't have a lot of planets at the end of a sign. So the moon gets only so far, and then it's not talking to any planets anymore, although the sun is at 24 degrees Leo now. So it's moving towards the end of the sign, and the moon has to reach that before it can actually stay longer out of void, if you know what I mean. So I explained that on my Instagram the other day as well, like that we were having these long void moons, and what does the void moon mean exactly? So if you can go look at that, you might want to see that on my Instagram, the Golden Astrologer, so that you can get a handle on what the void moon is doing these days. So the sun is really the only one at the end of a sign. And that's why when the moon doesn't aspect the sun, it cuts off relationships with the other planets very, very soon into its travels. So the moon will go into Scorpio tomorrow, later in the day, stay in Scorpio for a few days, and it'll go void on Wednesday night at 10:46 p.m. Eastern time. So we've got lots of good time between Monday late in the afternoon and Tuesday and Wednesday where it's not going to be void. And then we get up in the morning, in this region of the world anyway, 4:30 a.m. on Thursday, and it goes into Sag. So it's mostly void overnight on Wednesday. And then, it goes along until it really gets void again at 4:30 in the afternoon on Saturday the 22nd when it trines the sun in Leo. And that's really the last aspect the sun is making before it goes into Virgo at 10:19 p.m. So moon will change signs into Capricorn that day. It's really only a half-hour void. That's good. And that's because the sun is so late in Leo. And then the sun will change signs and we're back to an early degree again. So right now the sun is ruling the heavens because it's in its own sign. And that will change at the end of the week when it goes into Virgo next Saturday, the 22nd. And Venus is in Libra. And she's going to be there for a little while too. So she's ruling the heavens also. So really everything sort of speaks to Sun and Venus at least till the end of the week. And then it will be more things speaking to Venus. So I think that's good. I think that having Sun and Venus ruling the heavens right now is really excellent. And it's actually giving us a lot of positive energy amidst the sludge that we're going through. I don't expect energies to sort of calm down and get better. People always say to me, when's it going to get better? When is it going to like calm down? Why is it so crazy? It's eclipse season. And I'm hoping to feel better myself as well. You know, it feels to me, eclipses feel just that the volume has been turned up on everything, and what normally doesn't feel good feels worse. I mean, if it's uncomfortable and doesn't feel great, it feels worse during eclipses. And everything that rolls across our social media or our email or anything that's rolling across our life right now, phone calls, text messages, anything that's coming in feels more pointed and a little more complicated. And we have more emotions around it. Something you might have been able to brush off in a text message or for example, something you saw on social media has more weight during eclipse season. It's bothering us more. It's getting under our skin more. And that's the one thing that I think is a real drawback to eclipse season. Although, we should be aiming for breakthroughs. I like that we're going towards a North Node eclipse. We got the harder one. I think this was going to be the harder one. Even though last week I said I don't think it's a dark eclipse, but I think it's been harder and it's been complicated these last weeks. So moving into a North Node eclipse in Pisces, I really feel like should be a little more freeing, especially with Uranus kind of shaking the cage there, rattling the cage, getting us out of our familiar patterns and giving us some more freedom. Remember, freedom is valuable, okay? So if we are being told to release something that no longer serves us, think about the freedom, feel into the freedom that is on the other side of that. We often don't want to admit that something is no longer serving us, so it's harder to let go of that. But I would imagine whatever came up for you last week during Wednesday's eclipse is also really still reverberating in the direction of, see how this doesn't really serve you anymore. So let's move in a different direction. So I believe that's the right course of action in this moment. In the meantime, if you want to know more about the eclipse and what's going on in your chart and how the planets are serving you or not right now and what to be aware of, then you can come see me for an astrology session. You just go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, click book online and choose your astrology session. If you've seen me before, you want to come back and see me again, or if you've never seen me, I welcome you. And, I also do this wonderful 5D Lemurian Reiki, which is just a beautiful process. And it clears up a lot of the aggravating energies and softens the edges and helps us release things. So that's something very good. And then I also welcome you to spend longer time with me if you want to go into expansion mentoring, which is 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. And you can write to me about that and ask me questions. And if you should, you shouldn't, or where you are at in your life, if you'd like to know, you can write to me, info@thegoldenastrologer.com or deb@debmcbride.com, and I can answer those things. Then I'm on Instagram at The Golden Astrologer, so I welcome you there as well. Have a beautiful week ahead. Enjoy these good aspects we have tomorrow. Watch out for the Mars-Neptune, and please do some emotional review, some emotional homework as we get closer to Friday and Saturday at the end of this week. And I'm here if you need me, so you know where to find me. And I wish you a beautiful week. Gratitude to everyone for listening, and I will see you on the internet.